Thank you again, everybody, for joining. So great to see you all here. I see some familiar faces. I'm Laura. I'm a design engineer here at Snap. And today I'm going to be showing you how to build shared experiences on spectacles. Right? Sorry. Sorry, just having a moment. Okay. All right, I'm going to show you how to build shared experiences on spectacles. Spectacles are designed to bring people together. You and your friends can be heads up in the same experience, seeing each other's eyes, and sharing an AR experience together. This can't happen anywhere else. I'm going to show you some examples, let's see here, of shared experiences, here they are, that already are available on spectacles. You can challenge your friends to a game of chess like you just saw. You make the world your shared canvas in finger paint, and you can see who can generate the craziest objects with Imagine together. Quick show of hands, how many people were at the Snap Partner Summit yesterday? Lots of you, awesome, love that. Most of you were there yesterday. One of the experiences that we showed there was in a giant yellow dome. It was called Council, and I had the opportunity to build that. It was an experience that let 12 people at a time have a community building shared experience where they could participate in a story and interact with AR elements like fish, birds, and planets. So this just gives you an idea of some of the things that you can build as shared experiences on spectacles. Today I'm going to show you how you can use Snap's Connected Lenses developer tools, specifically Spectacles Sync Framework, to build shared experiences on spectacles and test them right in Lens Studio. We're going to do that by starting to prototype a game of tic-tac-toe. So let's get started. I'll move us over into Lens Studio. Woo, yeah. All right. Thank you guys. So here we are in the new Lens Studio. I've already gone ahead and set up the project, but I'm going to show you how I did that. So first of all, down here in the asset browser, you will see Spectacles Sync Framework. This is a package that for you, when you're setting up your project, you can go up into the asset library here. You'll go down to Spectacles, and you'll see Spectacles Sync Framework. I've already installed it, but for you, you'll see this blue import button the first time you're installing it. So that'll arrive here, show up in your asset browser. You'll want to right-click and unpack that, and that will give you access to all the resources you see below. This prefab is what you'll want to drag up into your scene, as I've done here. And this is like your home base for everything connected lenses. If you've built, let's actually show of hands, who's built a connected lens on mobile or spectacles before? Cool, all right, we got lots of, so your experience either on Spectacles 2021 or mobile will be very relevant to you. It's very similar, but there are some differences that I want to highlight for you. So first of all, connected lenses on spectacles are co-located. So what does that mean? That means that you and your friends are in the same physical location. So Spectacles Sync Framework takes care of that for you. So it provides UI that guides users how to get into that co-located space. So if you're the first user that's joining the experience, you're going to be guided to look around your space. What you're doing there is generating a map of your surroundings. And then subsequent users, as they join the experience, they'll be guided to localize against that map. So once users have either mapped or localized, they now have a shared frame of reference, a shared coordinate system that you can put your content into so that everyone sees it in the same spot. So what that looks like in the package, that's all handled by this mapping object. You don't need to worry about anything that's going on in there, but just be aware that it's there, keep it enabled, everything else will take care of itself. The other thing I want to highlight for you is there's this start menu. So if you're building a lens, you should think about building it for connected cases, multiplayer, but it's also great to provide an option for single player. So anyone can enjoy it if they have friends around or if they're just by themselves. And the really cool thing I actually just learned from my friend Jacob, who's around here somewhere, is that this start menu actually lets you mock a connected session. So you can write your code as though it's a connected lens that's sending messages over the network, doing all of that. But if your user chooses single player mode, you don't have to do anything different. It will mock a connected lenses module, and you don't have to change your code. So that is really cool. I'm very excited about that personally. And the other thing I want to highlight here is that you can customize the start menu. So you can see here, this is like a very simple start menu, 2 buttons. You can customize this to match your experience. All right, so we have our package and our scene. Possibly the most amazing thing that happened with Lens Studio for connected lenses is we can now test multiple players in Lens Studio. I don't know if you ever tried building connected lenses on Spectacles 2021. You'd have like 3 pairs on your face. You'd be trying, none of that anymore. You can test right in Lens Studio. So I have a preview panel here. I'm going to go ahead and add another preview panel. And I think I want this over here. I'm going to put this to Spectacles 2024 Interactive Environment. And each preview panel is going to simulate a different player. So if you wanted, you could have like 5 preview panels. You could have 10 preview panels, like go nuts. Well, there might be a limit, but I haven't reached it yet. Okay. So how you join the session is this button down here. So you're going to join the session, this little circle with the 3 dots, and then refresh your panel. This panel is now in the session, so if I clicked multiplayer, I skipped the UI and editor, which I will go back and mention actually. The second preview panel, I can do the same thing. And now, well, okay, this is a terrible example because I changed something beforehand. I'm currently skipping the UI in Studio, so let me uncheck that. There's a reason I was doing that. It's actually very helpful as you're like iterating and making changes. You don't necessarily want to go through the flow every time. The flow is going to be very quick here in Editor. You probably just like briefly saw those screens. But that's it. That's all you have to do to join sessions for multiple preview panels, test with multiple players right in Lens Studio. All right, let's start building our tic-tac-toe prototype. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the concept of tic-tac-toe. Probably don't need to explain that, but we have a player with an X, we have a player with an O. We're going to be placing those around. And yeah, what we're going to do is actually combine, to build this, we're going to combine connected lenses and Spectacles Interaction Kit, which a lot of you are just learning about, together to make this experience. So the first thing we're going to do is set up our prefabs. So I have these cute little X's and O's. All right. These cute little X's and O's, I'm going to put these under my co-located world. So this is another object in the connected lenses, part of the connected lenses package. I'm pretty much in the habit of just always putting the content that I'm syncing under this co-located world. So the first thing we want to do is make these objects manipulatable. So the way that we do that is with SIK. So right now, all these are, like, they don't do anything. They're just there. They're just the mesh with the material. So we want to make it possible to move those around. So this might be familiar for those of you who just joined some Spectacles Interaction Kit sessions. We're going to make these objects manipulatable. So the first thing we're going to do is add a collider. I'm going to make these a little bit bigger. You can see it's added there. I'm going to go into my Spectacles Sync Framework package, which includes Spectacles Interaction Kit. So if you have the Sync Framework package, you already have Spectacles Interaction Kit. I'm going to grab the interactable here, drag that over. I'm going to grab my interactor manipulates, and I'm going to click apply. Make sure you click apply when you're changing your prefabs to save your changes. So that was on my O. Let's see how far that got us. Okay, so I'm moving my O, but what's wrong here? It is only moving in one preview panel. So we need to sync that position. So the way that we do that, and again, if you've built connected lenses, this might be familiar to you. This was a pre-existing Sync Framework tool. We're going to go into Sync Framework, and we're going to grab this Sync Transform. So I'll drag that over, The sync transform is a script that automatically syncs well, you can choose, but it syncs the transform of that object. So you can choose for it to sync the position, rotation, scale. Right now, I really just care about the position, so that's all I'm going to do. You can also use smoothing. So this will make sure that, as player A is moving their O, it looks smooth to player B when they're seeing that position updated across the network. So again, let's click apply, and now let's see what happens. So I have my O. Let's refresh. And make sure I actually added what I think I added. All right. Oh, what's going on here? Did I add it to my O or my X? Okay, let's go over to our X and we'll set this one up from scratch. So we have our collider. We're going to make that a little bit bigger. And who remembers what we added from SIK? We have our, this one, did I hear interactable? I think I heard interactable. Interactable manipulation. And our sync transform. We want to just keep position, add smoothing, click apply. Let's refresh our preview panels. And let's move our X. And it's still not syncing. Isn't that a mystery? All right, well, I have a backup. Let's see what's going on in this completed project I can demo for you. So let's join our preview panels. Remember, go down, click this icon, bottom right, refresh our preview panels. We will join the session from both. Again, I'm skipping the UI and editor just for convenience. And we don't have our X's and O's. Okay, we're going to go back to our original project. So we are just going to triple check here. We have our collider, check. We have our interactable, check. We have our interactable manipulation. And we have our sync transform. We have locally synced our position. We've applied smoothing and clicked apply. Here, let's move these up into enable already. Let's see if that gets us closer. All right, we got our X and our O. Hey, can we get a round of applause? Yay. No one's ever been happier to see. Okay, so we have our X and our O syncing their position across the network. Now let's talk about spawning, because one X and O is not a game of tic-tac-toe. What we want to happen is player X will spawn their X, they'll move it around. Player O will spawn their O and move it around, and they'll go back and forth. So the way that we instantiate prefabs in connected lenses is using a tool called instantiator. So this is also a script that you'll see here in Sync Framework. We'll bring that up into our scene. And let's check out what's going on with the instantiator. So this is a little different, like similar but different to instantiating a prefab normally. Like normally you would just instantiate a prefab for yourself. This time, the instantiator is taking care of instantiating the prefab for everybody who's in the session. So the first thing we need to do is add our prefabs. All right, we're going to spawn these as children of, I think I'm just going to drag this over. So I have this under the enable on ready. The enable on ready is, I think we go back here to our co-located worlds. This is just a simple script that will enable content once the session is ready. So we only want people to see the content once we know that everything's good in the session. So our instantiator is now set up with our prefabs and the parent that they're going to be spawned underneath of. Now we're going to bring a script called our controller. This is what's going to handle assigning players, so who's X and who's O, and whose turn it is and what prefab they should spawn. So let's see, can anybody read this at all? I'm gonna think not really. Okay, is this better? Better? Good, okay, we'll work over here then. All right, so this is our controller script. Like I said, this is gonna assign X and O's to players. This is gonna handle whose turn it is, and it's going to handle actually spawning the X's and O's. So to initialize this controller, the first thing we're gonna do, we want this to be able to sync data across the network. That means we need to make it a sync entity. So I've already defined a variable above called sync entity, and I'm going to, I need a capital here. So a sync entity is like a fundamental class in sync framework. You can make any script a sync entity just like this. So new sync entity and pass in the script. So now I have the sync entity. This script is able to sync data. I want to set up a networked event that is going to tell everyone, hey, start the game. So the way we do this is we take our sync entity and we say on event received. And we're going to add the name of our event, that's going to be start, and the callback function that gets called if we receive that event. So again, this is setting up a networked event. The event is to start the game, and this second parameter here is the callback function that is called when that event is received. We're also going to use storage properties. So events are great if you just have like a one-time message you need to send out to the network. Storage properties are useful if you want to store some data that you're going to use later. So we're going to have a storage property called turnsProp. The way we set up a storage property, we define a new one, is storage property, then the type. So this type is going to be an int. We're going to call this turnsCount, and we're going to initialize it to 0. We're going to add our storage property to our sync entity, like this. And then there's one more thing we want to do. We want to let the script know what should happen if this property changes. So we're going to say turnsProp on any change. There's different options here. You can have on local change if you just want to respond yourself. There's also on remote change if you only want other players to respond, but we want on any change. So anyone who receives an update to this property should do something. We're going to add, I have a function up here, it's called setTurn. So when this property is updated, basically we're going to check whose turn it is. Now this is really important. We need everybody's attention. If there's one thing you take away today, I want it to be this. You need to make sure that any sync framework tool you're using is ready before you try and use any sync data from it. So it can take some time for the session to get set up. It can take some time for a sync entity to do its setup. It can take some time for an instantiator to do its setup. And if you try and use some data from that tool before it's available, you're going to get race conditions. You're going to be like pulling out your hair, like what's going on? So make sure that in this case your session controller is ready before you try to use it. The way we do that is global.sessionController notify on ready. So the session controller is going to tell us, hey, I'm ready. Do what you got to do. So we have a callback function here that's on ready. So once the session is ready, then you can access data, then you can set data, then you can do what you need to do. Use session controller APIs. Okay, so we've set up our networked event, we've set up our property, we've made sure that our session controller is ready. Let's start setting up the game. So once the session is ready, what we're doing here is using an API from the session controller, global.sessioncontroller.getUsers.length. That'll give me the number of users in the session. And I'm going to use that to assign a player to be X or to be O. So if player count equals 1, we're going to say that player, which I've defined a variable up at the top, is going to be X. If player count equals 2, you can probably guess what's coming. We're going to say player equals O. If We could have more people in the session. We don't have a job for them, but they could spectate. Sure, why not? So anything else, we're just going to say player is empty string. So now we've assigned our players. The first player to join will be X. The second player to join will be O. Anybody else is just there to watch. If the player is O, then we know that everybody who's playing the game is there, and we can start the game. So how might we do that? We set up an event before, a start event. So we can use that here. We can say, if the player is O, then we're going to send that start event. So sync entity.send event start. All right, so now we have our players in the session. They have their roles. We've started the game. The next thing we want to do is have, you can set this up however you want, but for the sake of this prototype, I'm going to have player X go first. So if the game is started, player X will spawn their piece. So let's handle spawning the piece now. So before we set up that instantiator in the scene, this is where we're going to use that. So our spawn function first, because this is, remember, so important that the instantiator is ready before you try to use it, we're going to first check, is the instantiator ready? If it is, then we're going to prepare to spawn our piece. So first we're going to set up some options. And we do that with new instantiation options. You can check the Sync Framework documentation. There's a lot of options that you can set up. Position, rotation, scale, on success, on error, a bunch of different options. The one that I really care about is just going to be setting the local position for now. And I will just set that to something kind of in front, but lower down. Now I'm actually going to use the instantiator to instantiate. I get typos in this often. Okay. Instantiate the prefab and the options. Okay, so now we're able to spawn a piece. Let's go back to that onReady. Actually, we did the onReady. We're going to go down to start. So now we've sent our start event out, and we want player X to spawn their piece. So if player is X, then it is going to spawn the X prefab. And let's see how we're doing. Let's cross our fingers because there's bound to be some error, but we'll handle it. Okay. Okay, we're getting controller 88. Let's see what we've done here. Turns prop, storage, property, manual, typo. That one's an easy one. Okay, so, oh, I don't want these anymore, actually. Player A has joined. We're refreshing. Player B has joined. Name of undefined. I think we need to populate our inputs. All right, so on the controller, we had the instantiator. And we had our O prefab. And we had our X prefab. All right, player O is joining. And there we go. So we have our X. It is spawned. So what happened there? Player X joined. Player O joined. Player O said, hey, start the game. And player X spawned their prefab. Okay, so moving right along. Now what we're going to do is handle turns. So we've spawned a prefab. But now we want the game to keep going. X is going to move theirs. O is going to move theirs. So we also have here, let me just think about the best order to do this in. Yeah, let's move over to the P script. So this P script is going to be attached to the X and O prefab, and this is going to handle whether or not the object should be manipulated, and it's also going to tell the controller, I've moved, my turn is done. So here in the initialization, we're just getting the scene object. We're getting the sync entity that already exists on the scene object. It has a sync transform on it, which is a sync entity. And we're doing sync entity notify on ready. Then on ready, we're getting that manipulatable from Spectacle's interaction kit. If the manipulatable, so if I created the prefab, it's my piece, it belongs to me, then I'm going to add, well, first I'm going to let it be movable. I'm going to set can translate to true. And if it's not my piece, it's somebody else's piece, then I don't get to move it. So we're going to set that to false. So if I'm player X, I won't be able to move O pieces. If I'm player O, I won't be able to move X pieces. The other thing I want to do is add a callback. So on manipulation end, I'm going to add finish turn. So this kind of simple logic is just if someone has moved their piece, then their turn is done. So it's going to tell the controller, my turn is done. So this piece has a reference to the controller. So it, and the controller over here has a function finish turn. So that's what we're going to use. We're going to say controller.finish turn. So now I need to add these to my prefabs. Each of my X and O's are going to get this piece script. And I'm going to populate my controller. Oh, we got to scroll down a bit. All right, apply, make sure you press apply. That's another one of those lessons to always keep in mind. Piece, add that. And again, populate our controller. Okay, so now we don't need these in our scene since we've updated them. I'm going to delete them. So this piece script is done. We're going to go back to our controller and finish up the final pieces. Oh, we're very close to being out of time. Okay, so turns, we're going to do let turns count equals turns prop. I'm going to try and speed run this. Turns prop dot current value plus 1. So this is getting the current turns count and adding 1 to it. And then we're going to set pending value to that turns count. So we're incrementing the turns count. And then when the turns property gets updated, it calls this callback set turn. So if the new count modulo 2 equals 0, and the player is X, so if it's X's turn and the player is X, then we're going to spawn the X prefab. Else if the new count modulo 2 equals 1 and the player is O, we're going to let O spawn its prefab. You only want one person to spawn the prefab since one person spawns it and it gets shared across the network. Okay, let's give this a shot. There's a spelling mistake? Where do you see that? Thank you for keeping an eye out.
There's a turns thing.
In set turn, spawn.
No, just scroll down.
Scroll down, okay.
Doesn't player 2 need the end of turn dash?
Yeah. I think it was in the fields or something. I think it would show up.
Oh, one of the turns count is missing an S.
Yeah, there.
Turns, oh, thank you guys. You got my back. Okay, team effort here. Yeah, love that. Love that for us, okay. Okay, we have our X. Player X is going to move their X. We got our O. Player O is going to move their O. We got our X. There we go. And back and forth and back and forth. All right. We made it just over time. That's all I have for you today. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining.
Check documentation for more information. Can't wait to see what you got.